Hey there, everyone. Greetings. Happy Saturday. It is Adrienne Lopez, the Integrative Awareness Coach. And I just wanted to stop by, I should say, and share with you a couple of reflections from this week. It's been an intense week. Just been doing a lot of work in regards to my own personal growth in my business as a coach, and then also working with others, right? And it's just a really incredible time, and a lot of pieces have been coming together in a really amazing and unbelievable way. But that's life, right? That's the miracle of life. But today I wanted to talk to you about the topic of I guess you could call it going upstream. And I have had that phrase, upstream, because it reminds me of the salmon. And I always, as a reading teacher, there was this little short story about the salmon, and it was nonfiction. That means it was like factual little blurb about salmon and how they swim back to the place of their birth when they have babies, and what an incredible force of nature and instinct that they have, where they know the river or the inlet, and that they go back and then they go against the current and they swim up against all odds, being eaten by bears, you name it. And so I love that metaphor, and I use it around me a lot, because it reminds me of that we might hit obstacles. It may appear that we're going the wrong way when like everything's going that way and we're going the opposite way. That we have to trust our instinct, and we have to trust ourselves, and know that maybe there's some things that aren't, many things that go outside of the intellect that aren't logical. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow our passion and our heart and our desire. And the idea of upstream, I didn't know it at the time, but was getting me out of my, I can't even say 9-to-5 job, because I was working much more than 9-to-5 as a teacher. If you know a teacher, or you've been a teacher, or you've had a teacher, you may know that the demands of the job are all of the time. Even when I wasn't at work, I was grading or planning or thinking about a discussion I had with a student and how I could be more effective. All of that was going on all the time, and I enjoyed it very much, because I'm the kind of person that's always learning and growing, and it was always very challenging, but it was also very tiring. And after, so many years of doing that, not that I even did it that long, some people have done it for 30 years. But for me personally, after doing it for 15 years in one capacity or the next, it wasn't working for me anymore. It didn't align with what I was being called to do in my heart, and that's part of the reason why I originally took a year sabbatical. But I was looking at what happens. Students are showing up in the classroom and they don't have the emotional container, or maybe they have some cognitive deficiencies, or learning disabilities, I should say, not really deficiencies. We all have deficiencies, so I don't mean it that way, but the way that the norm, the educational system teaches is to a particular type of intellect and a certain type of thinking. And it's changing, it changes more and more, and many teachers are able to adapt. And so I'm not saying that they're left unattended, but what I noticed is when students are showing up in a classroom, and I had this container of a classroom to observe this, but it's just like a little microcosm of our culture, right? That's what the classroom is. And the rules that our culture plays by, represented as an institution of a school, that there were kids showing up who weren't able maybe to have the emotional or mental development that they needed to cope and to process what was going on in the classroom. And so they may have been labeled as troublemakers or sometimes labeled as low or behind many years of other students. And not because they were lacking intelligence, but because their brain worked in a different way that the school system is not necessarily wasn't shaped to address. And so while these students are having a difficult time, teachers are trying to operate in this really restricted model of what education is, what intelligence is, how we're able to grade students or assess them. And it was a constant struggle for me to, because I wanted to meet all students' needs, not just 80% of them, And so it was an integrity issue for me. And every day that I showed up and I didn't have the resources or I didn't have the capacity to meet all these students' needs, it was really frustrating. And so I spent a lot of time and energy trying to make a valuable contribution, and of course I did, but it didn't actually change the system. And people will say change takes time, it might take 20 years to have mindfulness and social emotional learning in all schools and all classrooms. And I'm like, 20 years? I'm not going to wait 20 years for this fundamental human need to address this fundamental human need of mental and emotional health. And so, and even before I got into education 20 years ago, when I first started making my migration from the beauty industry, because I had been working in the beauty industry for 10 years, and I was at the point in my career where either I was going to go into education, like teaching people about, how to run a business or how to be in the beauty industry and how to build their skills and that sort of thing. But it didn't answer the call, right? So I went from the outside of the head, rearranging the outside of the head, into the inside of the head, because I found that working with mostly women, I worked with men also, but a lot of women were stuck in a mindset, and no fault of their own, this is a societal mindset, of beauty connected to their value and their self-worth. And it was, it doesn't matter what color your hair is, or how long it is, or the stylized cut, although beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, might make you feel good for a little bit, but after a while, you still have yourself, right? And if you're not happy with yourself, if you're not satisfied with yourself, if you don't feel worthy, it doesn't matter what your hair looks like at the end of the day if you don't feel good inside. And so this was the impetus for me to shift, and I thought, gosh, what is one skill that I could develop that would really help shift thinking and the way that people perceive the world? And I'm like, language, right? Language is the tool that we think with, and that if we have mastery over our language, then we can begin to observe how we use it to think. And that's how I got into meditation and yoga and metaphysics, and beginning to recognize the power of self-awareness and how powerful it was in the development of mental as well as emotional well-being for people. Self-awareness is essential to self-acceptance, releasing old, worn-out patterns based on fear or limitation, and really, language one tool, but not the tool, right? Because language exists in consciousness. So then I shifted to, wow, if I could really support people in becoming familiar with their nervous system and how it works and how it processes information and what happens when there is a strong emotion in the body that's unprocessed, and how, of course that affects how present people are. For example, in the classroom, if a student is constantly under stress because of what's going on in their home, they're in fight, flight, or freeze, they're not available to learn, right? So if you're in fear, your body, naturally, your physiology will turn off your senses, because all of the focus of your nervous system is getting ready to either pretend it's dead, fight off, the enemy, or run away. And so the part of the brain that's needed to learn, the prefrontal cortex, isn't necessarily available. And then a lot of these kids get labels like, I'm dumb, I can't read, I can't write, and it has nothing to do with the truth of who they are. And yet they get these labels at a young age and they get stuck, and then they can't evolve outside of it to the truth that they are beyond intelligence. Their nervous system was the most intelligent thing in the universe, and it was actually doing what it could to protect that individual in the situation that they found themselves. And so I left education, traditional education, because it was too restrictive for me, and I wanted to educate outside of the restrictions that were given to me by a school district, by a curriculum, because it's not that the content's not important. Like, it's not important to it's not that it's not important to know science and math and read literature and learn about grammar. Like, all those are really practical tools, and I love them, and I loved being a teacher. But I saw that was just superficial, right? If people didn't have education about their own consciousness, their own self-awareness. And so that's when I decided to leave the classroom and start teaching people about their nervous system, not necessarily just children, but parents, adults, anyone that found themselves against a wall, like they'd gone so far in their life, and they knew that there was something more in their heart, but they didn't know quite what was stopping them or how to get around it. Or they were in addictive patterns in their life that were causing them pain or suffering, and they were looking for that bridge across something that their mind and their body didn't know how to get out of, because it was a learned behavior pattern. And so really this is a process of teaching people about their subconscious triggers, how the subconscious mind works, also known as this emotional baggage that we carry with us that's stored in our memory, and the power of emotion, because emotion is like glue. The stronger the emotion, the stronger the memory in our nervous system. And then that gets relegated to the unconscious nervous system, and then it's acted out in a cycle over and over again. And so we have that subconscious mind running the show, and our conscious mind is like, but hey, wait, go over here, right? And you end up over here instead. And so there's this sense of not being in control of your own life, and that can be really scary for people, frustrating, and painful. And so people find themselves feeling hopeless. They might go to psychologists or go to doctors and be medicated, but there's just a whole skimming over the power of your nervous system and how it functions, and the potential that's there, that's not available because when we're dealing with unconscious behavior patterns, we're like split within ourselves and we don't even know it. So that takes a lot of energy to manage the constant inner conflict of our conscious mind versus our unconscious mind. And there's this disconnect. And this disconnect is from our own life energy. And originally it happened because we were trying to protect ourselves as children, because we had to conform to outside circumstances and other people's measuring sticks. And that is a level of self-rejection. And it's so common and so subtle and just the way the world is that people don't even acknowledge that that's happening. But when you are a child and you're depending on the people around you, your caregivers, for your safety, and they don't have the skills to walk you through your emotional upsets because they can't even walk themselves through those emotional upsets because they don't even realize how their nervous system works and how their unconscious mind works, and that they're just at the effect of these events unfolding in their life. And there's this sense of powerlessness and hopelessness and real suffering. And so for me, this was beyond just teaching children how to meditate. And nothing's the matter with mindfulness in schools and meditation and teaching parents and teachers. But for me, it was like getting underneath that to the real symptom. And eventually when you meditate on a regular basis, long enough, all that material on your subconscious mind arises naturally. And that's an incredible technique. But if you don't have a teacher or you don't have a guide or a mentor that can lead you through a lot of this, a lot of people will just stop meditating because it's too scary. They didn't develop the emotional container, without a community, without guidance. They don't know how to process that information because it feels like it will overwhelm you. And so once you begin to understand your own nervous system and how it works, and your subconscious mind and the different parts of your brain work together or not, that you can start reconciling these different energies in your consciousness so you can befriend your brain and your nervous system. So you can be consciously at choice instead of being unconsciously triggered and reacting in a habitual way that might be familiar and might be comfortable, even though it's painful. It's familiar, at least you know it. And then you can be at choice at how you choose to interact with another person. So I could talk about this on and on, really, because it's something I'm very passionate about. But really, I just wanted to let you know that self-awareness is essential to uncovering and accessing your true potential, your potential of all that you are, your inner resource. And so that's really how I work with people as an integrative awareness coach. That's where I got the term, to integrate your awareness. Those parts of us that have fragmented off in order to protect us. And I'm going to be leading a master class this month, and today is August the 14th, so I plan to be leading it on August the 28th, so that's in 2 Saturdays from now, and I hope you can join me. It's going to be free, and I'm going to take about 90 minutes in looking at how the nervous system works, how our brain makes memories, how we process information, how that information gets stored in our subconscious mind, how we can intentionally make the unconscious conscious, face parts of ourselves that may have seemed scary, too scary to face, and that how that we can begin to become present to the true magnificence of our own intelligence, which is life, which is what we're here to share with one another. So I hope you can join me. I'll be talking more about it in the next 2 weeks, about the specific day and time. But it's really how I'm being called to serve, based on all that I've been through in my own personal healing journey, my work with my clients in my chair. Many people joke that hairdressers are psychologists, and it's not really that far off, because so many people shared their lives with me, and I began to see patterns, and their wider social patterns of the way women perceive themselves and what's possible based on gender, which isn't necessarily true. But when you're encouraged to live in an unconscious construction that's not your own making, that you're not even aware that it's there, right? We have these individually, we have these in families, then we have them in larger social structures. And so it was an opportunity to start questioning that. And then as a classroom teacher, I began to see, how students' belief systems about their intelligence, how smart they were, how capable they were, whether it was even true or not. They began telling themselves this story because of some events that occurred, and that was their proof. And so this is like an opportunity to reconcile the truth of who you are, so you can reconnect with that. Because most people, and I'm speaking for myself here, are so amazed when they start to see how their nervous system was trying to protect them all of this time. And it may not have been in a way that's allowed them to continue to grow, because people get stuck, right? They get stuck in comfort, even though it might be familiar, it might be painful, it's familiar, and many people will stay like they don't know, like we don't know what we're missing because we never had it, right? All right, that's all for now. Till next time, please remember what a valuable treasure you are, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.